Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Talk Sports Show on Monday, October 20th. Today's show is a very loaded show. I've got my upset picks, and I've got my three most disappointing teams, head coaching replacements, most surprising teams, more head coaching replacements, and grading first-year South Florida head coach Alex Golish. Let's get right into it. Here are my upset picks for this week. And just a heads up, today's show is not the only time you're going to get upset picks. You're going to get 3 upset picks tomorrow and Wednesday, along with NFL picks. But my first upset of today's show is Ohio State plus 3.5 over Michigan. I think this is going to be a really good game for Ohio State and Michigan. I like it to be high scoring, and I think somehow Ohio State ends up winning, and they pull the upset. And that is why I like Ohio State plus the point, plus 3.5 here. My second upset is UTSA plus 2.5 to upset Tulane. This upset might happen. I don't know. Tulane has played really good this year, and I like both these teams. UTSA had a really good game last week against South Florida, and I thought they played really well. But I think they can pull the upset here against Tulane. And my last upset on this video is South Carolina plus 7 over Clemson. Clemson's been rocky this year. They win a couple games in a row, then they lose. I think South Carolina beats them, and South Carolina has to win this game in order to become bowl eligible, and I think they do. Here are my cover picks for the first show this week. My first cover pick is Texas minus 13 over Texas Tech. I like Texas Tech. I like Texas to cover here and win. My second cover pick is San Jose State plus 3.5 over UNLV. I don't think this is going to be an upset, but I think if you look at how low the point spread is, 3.5 right now, I would easily take San Jose State plus the 3.5 to cover. And if you're feeling risky, you can even take San Jose State plus 3.5 to cover and to pull the upset. This last one, I feel like this is criminal for Penn State. Penn State minus 20 over Michigan State to cover. I like Penn State to cover here for 2 reasons. One, Michigan State cannot score. If you watched when they played at Ohio State, all they got was a field goal. And Ohio State covered the spread against them. Last week they got the spread. They barely scored. Michigan State did. And now this week they got Penn State. I think it's going to be the same result. I don't think they're going to score very many points, and I think Penn State covers. Now here are my over-under picks. First over-under is Ole Miss versus Mississippi State, and I like over 56 points in this game. I think this is going to be your typical SEC rivalry game where both teams want to score a lot of points. And here's the thing. I think this could also be an upset. I think Mississippi State could beat Ole Miss because Mississippi State has nothing to play for. They are not going to a bowl game. Mississippi State has nothing to play for, so they could spoil Ole Miss's season by winning this game. I just talked about this game a couple minutes ago and my upsets. Now it's here again in the over-under. South Carolina versus Clemson. I like over 52 points in this game for two reasons. I think both teams are going to be able to score. Spencer Rattler looked a lot better last week against Kentucky. He looked like the old Spencer Rattler. And if that Spencer Rattler plays a really good game against Clemson, I think that gets South Carolina to a bowl game, one. And two, I think the over hits in this game. And the last over-under pick for this show is Kansas and Cincinnati. I like the under here for one reason. That is Cincinnati cannot score over 20 points. They are terrible this year under Scott Satterfield. And I'm going to say this right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Satterfield's a one and done at Cincinnati. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets fired. That's just me. But you will see coaches, I think, that could get canned later on in the show. But I like the under in this game because I do think Kansas is going to score. It's 58 points. I don't think it gets to that. So that's 2. Here are my 3 most disappointing teams in college football this year. Number 3, East Carolina. I had very high expectations for East Carolina this year in the American Athletic Conference. I thought they were going to be one of the teams to compete and maybe win the AAC this year, since Cincinnati, Houston, and the UCF all left for the Big 12. But they really disappointed this year. And you may hear me talk about their coach later on. Number 2 disappointing team, Purdue. I know they lost Jeff Brom, but Ryan Walters was the defensive coordinator last year for Purdue, and they had a really good defense last year. And I thought they were going to carry that momentum into this year and do big things in the Big Ten West. But as you can see, that didn't happen. They finished at the bottom of the Big Ten West, and they're going to miss a bowl game. They will not make a bowl game this year. And my number 1 most disappointing team in college football this year is Cincinnati. The reason Cincinnati is my most disappointing team is because, like I said about them in the preseason, I thought they were going to compete in the Big 12 in their first year and maybe win the conference. But that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Actually, it's not going to happen, and I think Satterfield might be on the hot seat going into year 2. 3. Okay, so here we go. Head coaching replacements for Texas A&M. I'm giving you 3 candidates. Number 3, Jeff Traylor. This one, Jeff Traylor's at number 3 for me. And he's number 1 on most people's board because he's already talked to A&M about maybe taking that coaching job. And I could see an avenue where he leaves UTSA and gets a lot of money from A&M to go be their head coach. Number 2, and this one makes the most sense to me, and it probably makes sense to a lot of people. Mike Elko, who is the current head coach at Duke. He was the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M at one point. And they had a really good defense when he was the defensive coordinator. And look what and then he got the head coaching job at Duke. And look what he's done at Duke. He brought that program from not being relevant in football to being one of the more relevant teams in the ACC. And my number 1 coaching candidate for Texas A&M is Scott Frost. I think if you give Scott Frost the bag and you tell him, look, come to College Station and coach Texas A&M, he would take it in a heartbeat. And 2 reasons why he would take it. 1, Texas is a great state to live in, and he could easily probably move his family out there and his kids. And 2, recruiting. Scott Frost is, if not the best, he's one of the best recruiters in college when he was a coach at Nebraska and when he was his coach at UCF. He was a really good recruiter at those 2 places. Now, the next team I'm going to give you 3 coaching replacements for is Michigan State. Number 3, and this one, it's a shot in the dark that it happens, Mark D'Antonio. Because he is currently a senior analyst on staff right now at Michigan State with their interim head coach, Harlan Barnett. So, D'Antonio, there's an outside chance they could bring him back to be the head coach. Number 2, Paul Chryst. He was at Wisconsin for a few years, and he was at Pitt. He's another guy that knows how to recruit. Paul Chryst. And I think he could build a culture there in East Lansing. And that's what you need with a coach, is somebody that can build culture. And my number 1 coaching replacement for Michigan State, Brian Harsin. Look what he did at BYU. He recruited really well at Boise State. Sorry, at Boise State. He was a really good coach recruiting-wise at Boise State. And that's what led him to get the job at Auburn. And he did a decent job of recruiting at Auburn. But things started to fall off. Stuff came out. And he got fired. But I think he deserves another shot. My 3 most surprising teams this year in college football. Number 3, Colorado. Deion Sanders, a 4-win improvement from last year. They only won 1 game last year. And look what Deion does when he comes in this year. He tells the kids, look, you can either stay and compete for playing time, or you can hop in the portal. He brought in 87 transfers. And I know they're not going to make a bowl game, but the reason they're one of the most surprising teams to me is because I was actually very high on them. I had them finishing middle of the pack in the Pac-12 this year. Not knowing that this would be their final season in the Pac-12 because they'll be going over to the Big 12 next year. But that's neither here nor there. Number 2, West Virginia. There's a lot of people out there that had no hopes They had no expectations for West Virginia, and I was one of those people. And West Virginia has shocked the world this year in a sense. They had no expectation. They had very low expectations. Nobody was picking them to win more than 2 games. Not even me. I had them winning 2 games right on the nose, and they blew past that. They've won 6, and I am surprised. Neil Brown should not be fired, and I don't think he will be. And my number 1 most surprising team this year, Northwestern. They were another team. They fired Fitzgerald because of all the inappropriate stuff that was going on. And they hired David. They made David Braun the interim coach. Everybody's like, "Oh, he's not going to stick around after the season. He'll be gone. They'll look for a new hire." Nope. He's going to be the permanent head coach at Northwestern. They took I'm pretty sure, 99% sure, they took the interim tag off of him. And now, we're going to look at a couple more head coaching replacements. Starting with San Diego State. Boise. Starting with Boise State. The number 3 coach I could see going to Boise State is Chris Peterson. Peterson's been out of coaching for a while, and I think if he wants to get back in and get his name back on the map, going to Boise State's not a bad idea. And here's the funny thing about Boise State. They did fire Andy Avalos, but they still have a chance to win the Mountain West, which is crazy to think about. They're 5-2, 6-5 overall, and they can still win they can still win the Mountain West even without having a head coach. The number 2 head coach I can see going to Boise State is a guy that used to be there, Brian Harsin. And this is if they want to go back to who was there before Andy Avalos. So if they want to go back to the previous regime. Brian Harsin was a really good head coach at Boise State, and he was also a good recruiter there. And I think if he goes back, that they'll win 5 or 6 games a year. But the number 1 guy for Boise State that I want to see them hire, Kellen Moore. He's an alum of Boise State. He flipping great offensive-minded head coach that would fit right in with what they do at Boise State. Throw the ball and a lot of running. Now San Diego State. And there's a couple names on here that people might say, you might be on to something. Number 3, Army coach Jeff Monken. I know Army's going to the American Athletic Conference next year for football. But I can see Jeff Monken saying, I've done enough here at Army. I built up the program. I want to hand the reins to somebody else. And if somebody gives me the bag to be their head coach, I'll go take it. And say, for example, San Diego State. Who wouldn't want to play for Jeff Monken? He's a really darn good head coach. Number 2. And this one, I don't know if it happens. It might. Tommy Rees, Alabama offensive coordinator. Saban loses coordinators every year. They either become a head coach or they go to the NFL and become an offensive coordinator. And I think he might lose his offensive coordinator this year, and Tommy Rees, whether it be taking a head coaching job at San Diego State or somewhere else. I think that Tommy Rees will be a head coach. If not this year, then the next coaching carousel cycle. And the number one hire that I think San Diego State should go after is Charlie Strong, former Texas head coach, former South Florida head coach. Charlie Strong is a heck of a recruiter, and I wouldn't mind seeing him back in coaching to get his name back on the map. Go out west to San Diego, California, and go out and recruit out there, because you know there's kids that are going to want to go to San Diego State if you get Charlie Strong. So segment number 6 now, I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions on Alex Golish's first year as the head coach at South Florida. So, and I wrote 3 bullet points, but I'm going to elaborate more on it. So the third one, effort. I love the effort I have seen out of South Florida this year under Golish and Coach Golish in his first season. The guys look like they actually care and want to play for him, compared to the last 2 coaches they had, it's Jeff Scott and Charlie Strong. They look like they want to play for Coach Golish and go out there and win. They are in it every possession until the end of the game. And I feel like they're building something really special in Tampa without Golish. Like I said, number 2 is the guys want to play. If you got a coach that the players want to play for, they're going to go out there and play like they actually care. And that's what this team is doing. These guys want to play for Coach Golish. They care. They genuinely care. They're in every game. You know what? They, at the beginning of the season, 3rd game of the year, they were very, very close to beating Alabama. And I didn't think I would be saying that when doing this great for Coach Golish. They could have beaten Bama. They could have. And they probably should have. They do play them again next year. And number 1, culture. You can tell that Coach Golish is changing the culture at South Florida. He has these guys playing with purpose, passion, intensity. And he has them playing disciplined football. They're one of the, I'm not going to say least penalized teams in the American Conference and overall, but they don't have, if you look at this year compared to the last few years, they don't take as many penalties this year pre-snap as they used to in the last couple of years when either Jeff Scott or Charlie Strong was the coach. And the other thing is, they like to run up-tempo. So if you get up and you move, you're going to miss a play. That's the thing I like about this South Florida offense, is it's not one-dimensional. They can throw the ball. They can run the ball. They can give you some trick plays. They can do a little bit of everything. Head coaching out here. Mississippi State. So here are some head coaching replacements for Mississippi State. Number 3, Brian Harsin. I think if you put Brian Harsin back in the SEC and put him at Ole Miss, I think he will do a lovely, wonderful job of recruiting, for 1. 2, he will build a culture down there in Stark Vegas at Mississippi State. He'll turn that program around within 2 to 3 years. Number 2, Jeff Traylor, UTSA. If you put like I said about Harsin, same thing with Jeff Traylor. And this is like the second time I've talked about him as a head coach somewhere. If you give, say Mississippi State Mississippi State or A&M gives Jeff Traylor the bag, he will, snap of a finger, he will go to that school and he will start recruiting in the offseason, and you will see instant results from Mississippi State. And number 1, Jamie Chadwell, who is the current head coach at Liberty. He is a guy I would love for teams to hire, to give an interview to. Because I think he would be a great head coach. Look what he did at Coastal Carolina. Nobody knew about them other than when they were an FCS school and they would always make the playoffs. Nobody knew about them in the FBS until Jamie Chadwell took over. And that is why I think he would be one of the perfect hires at Mississippi State. Now, here's 3 coaches. 5 coaches I think could get canned / fired at the end of the college football season. Number 5, Mike Houston, East Carolina. I talked about them in the disappointing category a few minutes ago. And same thing applies to their head coach, Mike Houston. When he was at Sam Houston State, he had a whale of success. Sam Houston State was consistently competing in the FCS. They were always in the playoffs, and one year they upset North Dakota State. And then he gets a job at East Carolina. First couple years, they do good. They compete in the AAC. And in this year, they regressed back to what they used to be. And that's bottom feeders in the American Athletic Conference. So that is why I think Mike Houston might get fired. Number 4, Dave Aranda. I think Dave Aranda might have saved his job. I'd give it a 55% chance that Dave Aranda saved his job, and the chances he gets fired are probably 85-95% chance he gets fired, because it doesn't look like those kids want to play for Dave Aranda. It looks like they're burnt out and they just want to get into the offseason and they want a new head coach. Number 3, Tom Allen, Indiana. And the reason I say he's number 3 is because he could get fired. But the problem is, and it was the same thing with Jumbo before Texas A&M decided to bite the bullet and fire him. Money, his buyout, is the reason that he is still the coach at Indiana. And I think he might be there next year. Number 2, Kenny Burns, Kent State. They have only won 1 game this year. And I think Kent State is a really good MAC team. And I don't understand why they're not winning games. And number 1, and this is the most obvious guy that's probably going to get fired at the end of the season, Troy Taylor, Stanford. And I'll give this one 98% chance that he gets fired, because Stanford has been horrible under him. And now for the last segment of the show, here are my group of 5 coaching candidates, Coach of the Year candidates. AAC, number 3, Jeff Traylor, UTSA. If you watched my preseason AAC conference standings review, I had UTSA as one of the 3 best teams in the American. And they have been that. It took them a little time to get used to being in a new conference, but they've won 8 games, and they have a chance to go win 10, maybe win 10 games if they could beat UTS, if they could beat Tulane. My number 2 Coach of the Year candidate in the American Athletic Conference, Ryan Silverfield, Memphis. This one is, you could kind of say controversial maybe, because Silverfield was on the hot seat before the season started. And I think he has saved his job. I think he deserves some Coach of the Year votes. And number 1, Coach of the Year, he should win the Coach of the Year in the American Athletic Conference, Alex Golish, South Florida. USF last year only won 1 game. 1. And they had a 5-win improvement this year. For 1, they've won 5 games this year. And I think Alex Golish should be getting votes for Coach of the Year. The MAC. Here are my Coach of the Year candidates for the Mid-American Conference. Number 3, Thomas Hammock, Northern Illinois. And the reason he's at number 3 is because Northern Illinois, they have outdone expectations. In my MAC preseason rankings, power rankings, I had Northern Illinois finishing dead last in the MAC and winning 3 games. And they have outdone that projection. And I think Thomas Hammock deserves votes for Coach of the Year in the MAC. Number 2 Coach of the Year candidate in the MAC, in my opinion, should be Scotty Leffler at Bowling Green. And the reason I say that is because Bowling Green last year was horrible. They had 2 wins all of last season. And look what they've done this year. They have won 5 games with a chance to go to a bowl game. Actually, I think they've won 6. I think they're 6-5 with a chance to get their 7th win this week. So that is why I like Scotty Leffler. And number 1, Chuck Martin, Miami of Ohio. The reason I think Chuck Martin should be the Coach of the Year in the MAC is, 1, Miami of Ohio last year was good, but they only won 6 games. And this is a big-time 3-win improvement from last year for Miami. And they're doing this without their starting quarterback. Here's my Sun Belt Coach of the Year candidates. Number 3, Tim Beck, Coastal Carolina. At the beginning of the season, I said before it started, Tim Beck is on the hot seat. And I kept saying it throughout the season, and Tim Beck must have heard me. He must watch the show with a burner account. Because he heard me and he said, no, I'm not letting the Talk Sports show tell me that I'm on a hot seat. I'm just going to keep going out and winning. They're 7-4 with a chance to win the Sun Belt because James Madison is ineligible. Number 2 Coach of the Year in the Sun Belt that deserves votes, John Summerall, Troy. And yes, you didn't know. You did not hear his name for coach, any of the coaching positions I talked about. But he does deserve votes for Coach of the Year in the conference in the Sun Belt because he's led Troy to. They're probably going to win the Sun Belt West, and that is why I like him to be second. And the winner of Coach of the Year in the Sun Belt is going to be Kirk Cignetti, James Madison. They were undefeated the whole entire season until last week when they lost to App State, which, don't feel bad, James Madison. App State does that once a year, every season. If you look back through history, they beat a ranked team. 2007, Michigan. And that's what put them on the map and coined the name Happy Happy. Because they go and they beat ranked teams. Ask A&M. Ask any ranked team that's played App State. They lose. Conference USA Coach of the Year candidates. Number 3, John Gross, Jacksonville State. I don't know much about Jacksonville State, but what I've heard from my friends that do is John Gross is one of the best coaches in the Conference USA. Number 2, Jamie Chadwell, Liberty. I did not think I would be saying that at the beginning of the season. I thought Liberty was not going to be this good. But everybody has bets and predictions they make before the college football season or whatever season it is. And sometimes they're wrong. And I hate to admit when I'm wrong, but I was wrong about Liberty. I was very wrong about Liberty and Jamie Chadwell. I did not think Liberty was going to do this good, and they're undefeated, ranked. And my number 1 Coach of the Year candidate in Conference USA, and this one should not be a surprise to anybody, what he's done with this school. Jerry Kill, New Mexico State. I'm going to be very short and sweet with this. If you look at what New Mexico State was before Jerry Kill got there, they were not a very good school. They were the laughing stock of Conference USA. They stunk. They won maybe 1 or 2 games a year. And since he's got there, they've improved every season with him as the head coach. And this year they have a chance to win 10 games. And you want to know something? They just beat Auburn last week, which they weren't even supposed to beat Auburn. They were supposed to get killed and lose by like 40 to Auburn. And somehow they won. And the last conference that I will be doing Coach of the Year candidates for Mountain West. Number 3, Barry Odom. Barry Odom is a really good coach. He was at Missouri, did really good there, and then he got fired for stuff that went on. But he has done a really good job at UNLV. Number 2, Brett Brennan, San Jose State. Brett Brennan's another coach that has improved the team where he's at. San Jose State was terrible before he got there. If you look at the last couple years, they've been on an upward trajectory toward winning more games. And they're going to make a bowl game this year for the 2nd year in a row. And number 1, Troy Calhoun Air Force. I like Troy Calhoun a lot, and I think he deserves Coach of the Year votes. And ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for tonight's show. I will see you back here at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning for another episode of the Talk Sports Show. Just a reminder, Thursday there is no show as it is a holiday. So Wednesday's show will be college football upsets and NFL pick upsets, locks, and game picks. So that'll be a long show on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Tomorrow's show is also at 11 a.m. and it is fantasy football review. So be sure to join in. But have a great rest of your night.